I'm here this morning and I want to talk a little about my testimony. So, a lot of people know that I sold 10,000 copies of a single book, but I wanted to talk more so about how I made six figures before social media. So I had gone into the video and realized I hadn't pressed play. So let me just backtrack a little bit, right? So I wrote my first book. For those who don't know my testimony, I wrote my first book every single day on my lunch hour. So that meant instead of having lunch, I was sitting at the computer at work writing my first book. So why was I doing that? Because I didn't have a computer at home. We live in a day and age now where everybody has a computer. They have a desktop, they have a laptop, they have an iPad, they have multiple devices, they have a cell phone. Some people will write their book on their cell phone because that's their only option. I was using the computer at work and I was doing what I had to do to get it done. So I went ahead and finished the book. And I remember when the books came back from print, I was in prayer. I asked the Lord, at that time my son was 15 years old. I said, Lord, I want to be a mom that's at home so that when he comes home, we can talk. I'm baking cookies, all that kind of stuff. Because at that time he was 15. And that's the age that, before or after, in that range is the age when kids can begin to go down the wrong path, or they will stick to what you have taught them. And I didn't want to take any chances. I didn't want him to end up down the wrong path because I was working all the time, trying to make a living. At that time, I was going to school too, full time at night. So it was like I was hardly ever there. So I prayed for the chance and the opportunity to be able to do something where I was more available to him. And God blessed me. He allowed me to be able to do that. The company that I work for, I had taken a civil service test for my position. That meant nobody could bump me out. I couldn't get fired. I couldn't get laid off, but I was able to resign if I wanted to. And they had something called the buyout, where you are able to get a lump sum for every year that you worked for the hospital. And at that point, I had already been in and put in 15 years of work, and they paid me a nice lump sum for my employment history. I think they were really just paying me to release that spot so that someone else could get it, but that's okay because I no longer wanted to do that. I found something that I loved even more, and I was excited to get started on that journey. And on top of that, the Lord allowed them to give me favor to where, I was able to get unemployment on top of the lump sum money that I had gotten from them. So that set me up nicely, and I was able to dedicate time to just learning what I needed to do to move books. And I didn't sell 10,000 books overnight. A lot of people ask me about that when they release books. They think it's some quick trick or some little thing that you do. It's a lot of work and lots of reading and lots of networking. A lot of times when you're successful, people don't want to give you your props, right? They chalk it up to luck, but I know for a fact that I didn't have anyone to teach me. I didn't have a coach. Nowadays everyone is a coach. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have anyone telling me do this, don't do that. Everything was trial and error. All I had was my books, and it was boxes of them, and I had an internet signal, and I was able to log on, connect with people, get people to buy my book, read my book, and assign my books to book clubs, right? So again, I read lots of articles. I read other people's testimonies of books, and it was a process. But I remember every single time I would go back to my printer to print more books, she would say, I don't know what you're doing, but these books are selling like crazy. Keep doing it. And that's exactly what I did. I kept doing what I was doing, and it ended up making me $100,000. God is good because, that's probably, the most money that I've seen in a lump sum ever. But it didn't stop there. My drive didn't stop there. I chalk it up to not being a fluke, not being me accidentally falling into $100,000, but just desperation. Sometimes when your situation is dire, when your situation is desperate, and what do I mean by desperate? I mean I had to eat. If I'm using the internet to connect and sell books, I need to be able to pay for my internet to continue to sell books. And I think back then my internet was like $19.99 a month. So I had to be able to do that. Plus I had to have phone service. All of those things helped get me where I was in an era where there was really no social media, or really, it was just starting, because you don't really consider, well, I guess you can consider AOL social media. But for me, there were no platforms like Instagram, Facebook. There were no Facebook Lives. So I did it the hard way, whereas people nowadays, it's easier to reach people. It's easier to tell people about your stuff. It's easier. It's just easier, right? So I was in a desperate situation. That's how I would put it. I was in a desperate situation. And when you're desperate and you pray desperate prayers and you go in and you pray and you cry out to God, He gives you answers, and He opened door after door after door for me. I remember landing on bestseller lists. And the good thing about landing on bestseller lists is, those lists are published places. And wherever they're published and people read them, they're saying to themselves, oh, that book is number 5, or that book is number 3, or that book is number 2. I keep seeing that book. Let me buy a copy. So once you've done the hard work, it's almost like, skiing. You get to the top of the slope, and then by the time you gain all that momentum going up the slope, coming down is so easy. So once I reach a certain height, even major publishers had found out about me. They queried about what I was working on next. They wanted to know about other books I had written, or even if I was writing other books. It was just, when I look back, it's kind of crazy because, sometimes you can be doing things in a frenzy and not fully realize what you're doing. And I've had to go back and kind of backtrack for the course that I'm building on book publishing to kind of chronologue what I did and everything I put in place to get me where I am today. So I'm a coach, but I'm still a coach who writes a lot of books because I just love to write. Writing is in my blood. I just crafted a system. I worked the system, and the system earned me dividends, and it continues to earn me dividends right now, right? I marketed. I wrote a note here. I said I marketed, I pressed, I researched, I dived in, I networked, I made connections, and I didn't even know what I had earned until I paused and took a breather and began to total up the numbers, right? So I tell people all the time, everybody has a book in them, and a lot of people love to write. Some people don't like to write, but whether you like to write or don't like to write, you can still create a product, a book, something that can get you earning today. And it can be about something that you absolutely love. Right? So like I said, I didn't have anyone to teach me. I did have a mentor. If you're familiar with Victoria Christopher Murray, she knows me. She was like my big sis in publishing. And after a while, she began to just help me and, just give me feedback and that kind of thing. But, publishing was all up to me. I didn't have anyone doing me favors. I didn't have any perks or anything like that. I had to start from the ground up to build what I've built right now. So you seeing me on YouTube, you seeing me with other products, you seeing me coaching, you seeing me launch a conference and hosting it every year, that didn't come overnight. It came from growing, it came from understanding how to network and actually doing it and continuing to do what works. I'm on the cusp of releasing my book, not Praise Over Profit, Purpose, Passion, Profit. That's the title of the book, and it's about how to dive into God's financial promises on your life. And in it, I talk about a principle that's the 60-40 rule. And it's almost like what doesn't work, stop doing what doesn't work. But what yields you dividends, continue to do that. So one of the critical things, like I said, the printer said, whatever you're doing, keep doing that. And that was a red light for me. That got my attention and it got me more focused on what I was doing. So if I begin to, reach out to book clubs, and that yielded me a dividend, because that doesn't work for everyone and it doesn't work for every kind of book. But when I did something and it yielded me results, I did more of that thing and less of everything else. Sometimes we try and do what other people did for their books and it doesn't necessarily work for ours. We have to be individual, right? So we have to do what works for us. So 10,000 books is a lot of books. I remember my youngest sister, coming home one day and telling me, I was on the bus and someone was reading your book on the bus. Oh my goodness, like, you're famous. And I didn't feel famous, but I did feel like I was selling a lot of books. So 6 figures wasn't an overnight thing, but it was a consistent thing, a consistent system. I watched a woman this weekend, and she released a product. Well, I think she released several products. I don't know exactly what they were, but she released it and she has a ready audience. And that's the thing. We don't realize you have to have a ready audience. And part of what I did was build an audience who knew me and I stayed connected to them. If you have people who need what you offer, you should be networking with them. You should be commenting on their stuff. You should be connecting about collaborations and all sorts of things, because otherwise when you pop up with your sale or your offer, you're going to wonder why everyone isn't knocking down the door to get at what you have, whether it's a book, whether it's a service, whether it's a product. And it's because, you haven't been in touch. You just show up when you want to sell something. So I backtracked to when I was marketing my book online. I would comment on other people's stuff. I was reading other books, so I would comment on other authors' books and, say it was a good book, what I loved about it, all sorts of stuff. And when you network with people, they network with you. So some doors open, some doors didn't open, but I walked through the doors that opened, and I always stayed in prayer because I knew this was going to be my livelihood. I prophesied to my niece this past weekend. The Lord told her, you're not an employee, you are an employer. And that's what I felt like with my book. I felt like, it's not that I didn't want to work. It's not that I didn't like to work, but I felt like there was more in me than sitting behind a desk for a measly amount of money. I'm not scoffing or complaining about it because it did serve its purpose at the time, but I knew that God had greater for me. So even when I was doing that, I knew that I wasn't always going to be someone's employee. I was going to be an employer. And I have employed people, and I look forward to employing more people. But let me backtrack to what I was saying about the woman who released her product. She videotaped her phone as her product was going on sale, and those notifications were coming so quickly on her phone that the names were kind of crossing over each other. That's the kind of frenzy you need to cause when you want to reach six figures and beyond. But sometimes, and I think I shared this on social media very recently, networking isn't just about what you're offering, but it's about what other people are offering too. And that's one of the major keys that I put in place when I'm networking with people, when I'm connecting with people. I never make it all about me. I make it about connecting and seeing the commonalities that we have. Now, nowadays, you know that some people, they will connect to you, they will friend you on Facebook, and 5 seconds after they friend you, they're sending you a link to their product page or this, that, or the other thing. Those are not the people I'm talking about. They are people that you are supposed to create a deep connection with, right? Your followers, the people who like your page, the people who follow you on Instagram, Twitter, the people who subscribe to your YouTube channel want to all feel like they know you personally. And not just that they know you personally, but they want to feel like you care about them. So that's why, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, or even YouTube, if someone leaves a comment, for the most part, I always try to connect with them, respond back, and show that I care, because I do genuinely care. I thank you for your feedback. I appreciate the fact that you subscribe to my channel. I'm thankful that you told your friend about my book or my product, or, they're coming over to my wealth preparation group or my book group. All of those are things I created for people. So the more I connect with people and am my genuine self, and they feel like they know me, then they're more likely to opt into what I offer. So just like I talk about finances all the time, I talk about finances, I talk about breaking through, I've prayed for people, I've put the value out there of what I know. And once you put the value out there, people are like, okay, yeah, I love that prayer that you did about this. I love that prayer that you did about that. I thank you for that video because it really helped me do this or that. And when you are a help to people and not always trying to sell them, then they will more so buy in to what you offer, because they see your genuineness and they see the benefit of connecting with you on a paid level. So you can't ever think that it's just buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. It takes more than that, and it took more than that for me to grow and make six figures and then continue earning after that in what I'm doing now, which is coaching and then getting ready to launch other things. You see the bottles, the clear bottles behind me, and they've been there for a little while because I'm working on something else. So books isn't my only lane. Coaching isn't my only lane. Finances isn't my only lane. I just launched a new brand not too long ago, a few weeks ago, and it's going really, really well. It's building, it's gaining momentum, and then when I'm done, then I have the bottles you see behind me are going to be part of a totally different independent business. So God wants us to use the ideas we have to earn six figures and beyond, but there's a starting point. You have to be one who can dedicate yourself to completing a book. So if you have a book that you've been writing for 10 years, 15, 20, you need to hurry up and finish that book, because it's almost like telling God that the information that he gave you to put in that book, oh, that can wait. Oh, I don't have time for that. Oh, I need to sleep. I have to be in bed by 9. I'm working hard at work. Or, yeah, I was working hard at work too. But on my lunch hour, I was writing my book. There are no excuses. It's almost like either you want to reach this level or you're comfortable staying on the level you're on. And when you won't sacrifice time, when you won't sacrifice the weekends because you just want to do fun stuff, then you're saying, okay, I don't care about what you want me to build. I just want to have fun. We're not 12. I understand we work hard and we want to relax, but there's a time to work, And then there's a time when God will give us a reprieve to relax once we've gotten the ball rolling on our stuff. So I hope that, as the new year approaches and as we make it through the new year and enter another year and another year after that, that each year that you are giving yourself goals and things that you want to accomplish that God has called you to. Begin to put in the work, begin to focus, begin to carve out time that isn't infiltrated by anything else, not TV, not talking on the phone, not texting a man or woman, but just focusing on what God has called you to do so that you can complete it. Remember, we're responsible for being good stewards. And if you're clicking those statuses saying, I believe God for millions, you have to believe that it's going to start with being consistent and reaching six figures first before you ever reach 1 million. It just works like that. So I hope that a little bit of my testimony has helped you understand the different things that you need to be doing. Don't underestimate networking. You just have to be able to see beyond people who are opportunists and people who genuinely want to network with you, right? So if this has blessed you, share it with someone else. I'd like to know what you're working on, what you're vowing to launch, and let me know what the holdup is. And maybe I can even shed some light or give you some advice on how to get unstuck if you feel stuck with moving forward on your idea, your product, or your service. But that's how I made six figures before social media. And now that social media is here, and I'm increasing on all my platforms, I'm believing God for millionaire status. So believe with me, agree with me, and I'll see you next time.